Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 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 Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om 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 Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Pranam, pranam.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om. As prompted by Papa from within, we have been trying to unearth as many clues and hints that would help us in our spiritual journey from In Quest of God. Along with the journey, yesterday he also prompted us to dwell on his own words as appeared in the preamble to In the Vision of God. Before we take up further on it, we thought we would read a few articles on the purity of mind. Every time when we go through a particular text and when we try to remember, to contemplate on the theme contained therein, we should know it is only to hasten our process of purifying the mind. Purifying the mind means the me and mine. Me and mine means the my rights and wrongs, my likes and dislikes, my cravings, my infatuations, my desire. All these put together. While we are engaged in the labeled spiritual discipline, probably our mind may, even there also the impurity can prevent us from going in. But during that particular moment, if it is so touching, it may take us to a sattvic state where we are temporarily free from the clutches of these impurities. But again, after the program, we are back to square one. So to really make use of the opportunity given by God in the form of various spiritual disciplines and our keenness to observe what is going on in and around us, rising ourselves a little from the individual level, looking at the bounteous gifts God has given to us through His creation. Along with all these, Papa says we should be vigilant. Even though we may get a glimpse of the higher life, because whenever we are lifted to the sattvic mood and whenever the mind becomes so conducive, so receptive to absorb, assimilate and to retain, but after some time, because the dirt has not been removed, temporarily it is set at rest. Even after in quest of God journey, even after covering various places as chronicled in the Vision of God, when he came back to the Kasargod ashram, prior to Mataji's coming there, at one time he has narrated that he felt a keenness from within to go in for solitude and water fast. Nearly for a month. At the end of the period only, Mataji came and he wrote a slip, "Mother, you have come to your own place." So that means the vigilance should be there. Unless and until we free, there is a complete, what do you call, cleansing of the impurities by catching hold of his feet mentally. So today we will read a few articles on this subject. Papa says, God's name is not different from God. He who has God's name always on his tongue is conscious of God's presence with him. This is the first thing we have to pray for. I am chanting, but I am not aware of your presence. Because God's name makes our mind remember Him. And as God is dwelling within our heart, such remembrance draws our mind within. The power of the name is such that it purifies our heart, enables us to feel God within us. God's name is very sweet because God is pure bliss and peace. If you have the name on the lips, you will enjoy the bliss of union with God. Just as the bee, when drinking honey from the flower, gets absorbed in it, so when you repeat the name, you will get absorbed in the name. You can sing the name of God in any tune and attune your mind to the sound of the name. When your mind is in tune with the sound of the name, you will lose consciousness of the body and remain in a state of divine ecstasy. So, to unite yourself with God and feel your oneness with Him, there is no easier way than the repetition of God's name. All forms of worship and yogas are done in order to realize God. This kind of union with God is possible only by continuous thought of God. God's name can be repeated at all places at all times. It does not require any particular condition or rules or regulations. It can purify us whenever and wherever we repeat it. Great saints and devotees have been telling us that by the power of the name we can realize the highest spiritual experience. All the impurities, evil desires, passions of the mind will be destroyed by the power of the name. Man's heart is filled with many impurities which are responsible for his state of misery and unhappiness. Unless the heart is thoroughly purified, one cannot approach God. This purification comes to him through divine grace. What he has to do is to take his holy name with utmost devotion and find refuge in him. The moment he hands himself over to God, God takes him up, purifies him, grants him. Therefore, we must trust him in the first place, take his name and surrender ourselves to him, and then by his grace we get purified and obtain his darshan. Ramdas is a servant of God and is going from place to propagate the greatness of the name. He tells you about the greatness of the name because it has given him invaluable benefit. When he was struggling to realize God, he found that the divine name was the easiest way to purify the mind and realize God. If you are really earnest in having the vision of God, Ramdas would advise you to have the name constantly on your lips and you will surely attain him. God's name can be repeated either silently or aloud, and you may repeat any name of God because all names are his names. God, who is nameless and formless, has assumed various forms and names. What is needed of you is one-pointed devotion for him and earnest endeavor to realize him. By realizing God, you will attain supreme happiness. You know that when we forget God and pursue the pleasures of the senses, we are not happy. Real happiness can be had only by remembering and realizing God. An anxious disciple went to a spiritual master and said, "A deep desire has arisen within me for God realization." This is by Dadaji, J.P. Vasvani ji. "Pray show me the way to mukti. Grant me the gift of emancipation." The Guru quietly replied, "In order to fulfill your wish, you will have to come and stay for a period of time with me, follow my instruction, and surely you will attain enlightenment." This is the jet age, the disciple interrupted. The computer age. Why can't you give me enlightenment right now? The Guru thought for a moment and said to him, "I am glad you are eager to receive enlightenment. Let us first try to get a little familiar with each other. If you will permit me, tonight I will come and have dinner with you." The aspirant jumped at the idea. At night, the Guru arrived at the residence of the aspirant. Immediately he said to the aspirant, "I am eager to eat. Kindly put all the dishes you have cooked into my begging bowl." The aspirant looked into the begging bowl and saw that it already had some stale leftover articles of food. "Let me wash the bowl first," he said. No, I am too hungry. I cannot wait." "Forget about washing the bowl. Be quick, serve me with the food," the Guru insisted. But he said, "But I have made everything with so much effort. Great care has been taken to cook a delicious meal for you. The good food will get polluted if it is put in this filthy, unwashed bowl." Quietly answered the Guru, "If this food can't be served until the vessel is clean, how can I put enlightenment, the food of knowledge, into your mind, which is not pure? Purify the mind first through the practice of silence."
Super, Swamiji. Nice point for pondering over. Corollaries. Nice corollary.
Purity. Because all of us are confronted with this, Not that we do not know the sadhana, not that we do not have the sufficient satsang materials, not that we are bereft of the glory of the divine name. Everything has been given to us. And part of our mind says we are earnest aspirants. But when the question of taming the mind and becoming aware of the presence of God, something blocks. So Vasvani ji has rightly put, our mind is still not free from impurities, and that is why we are unable to make the best use of it.
Swamiji, that is why we are opaque. Opaque.
Yeah. There are so many articles in the Vision for June on the same text. Main thrust is given for purity. Because really, we were stunned when Papa said he came back from the tour. At that time, only Gunda was there. Another fact which cannot go unnoticed is that Gunda, a great selfless devotee, true to Ramdas's request, remained in the ashram mostly alone, all the time that Ramdas was away from it. He now became Ramdas's whole-time attendant. After returning from the tour, Ramdas scarcely left the ashram for the town, and gradually the number of visitors also dwindled away, until for the last few months of his stay, he was singularly alone in the ashram, except for his loving and faithful friend. About 2 months having thus passed, under peculiar conditions which are not worthwhile narrating here in detail, as bid by Ram, Ramdas went on a month's fast and a vow of silence. Of course, he was living on a moderate diet of milk. About this time, he also got an anonymous letter threatening his life if he did not abandon the ashram at once. A fortnight after the beginning of the fast, Vidyacharya, a friend from Sholapur, came down to see him. He was naturally disappointed that he could not freely discourse with Ramdas, as he was much pained at the scanty diet on which Ramdas was living. One night, it might have been between 8 and 9 o'clock, Ramdas, Vidyacharya and Gunda were sitting on the outer veranda with a lantern burning in their midst. Vidyacharya and Gunda were deeply absorbed in singing devotional songs. Suddenly, without any notice, Krishnabai made her appearance. Ramdas wrote on a slip of paper and showed to her, "After all, you have come," and also inquired in it if she came alone. She also wrote in the note, "Mother, you have come to your own home. Ashram shall in future be your permanent place of residence." So here we read this out because under peculiar conditions, as bid by Ram, Ramdas went on a month's fast and a vow of silence. So the purity means, Papa has not explained the reason, but still a departure from his usual routine, which Ram made him to feel that it was necessary. Anyway, before we go to the next, one more email we have received, we thought we would share with you. I was walking in the supermarket and suddenly I heard a noise of things breaking. I turned down an aisle and saw a group of people staring at an older lady who had hit a shelf containing plates and glasses with her cart. Many had fallen to the ground and broken. Kneeling on the floor, embarrassed, the lady was frantically picking up the shattered pieces, while her husband peeled off each barcode saying, "We have to pay for all this." What a sad scene. Someone has a mishap, all eyes were on her. When I knelt beside her to help, a man also knelt beside us and said, "Leave it. We will pick this up. Let us get your information so you can go to the hospital and have that wound in your hand looked at." The lady looked at him, "But I have to pay for this." The man said, "No, ma'am. I am the manager and we have insurance for this. You don't have to pay anything. Let us get you taken care of." For you who have read this far, I would like you to close your eyes and imagine God doing the same for you. Collecting the pieces of your broken heart from all the missteps and blows that life has thrown at you, God will heal your wounds and your sins and mistakes, and it will be forgiven. This is a warranty called grace, that when you accept God as your only Savior, the manager of the existence of the universe, and will tell you everything is already paid for, go on your way. Stick on your wall for someone else. I copied this from a friend. Eh? Can't hear properly.
No, whatever you are telling, going inside like anything, and we want
Go
to
inside.
put again.
Eh?
Whatever you are telling, go inside.
No. We have to keep on hammering,
Yes, really, sir.
We have to keep.
Will you please go through this again? What?
Yes, Swami. Please.
Yes, Swami. 1 second.
I was walking in the supermarket. Suddenly I heard a noise of things breaking. I turned down an aisle and saw a group of people staring at an older lady who had hit a shelf containing plates and glasses with her cart. Many had fallen to the ground and broken. Kneeling on the floor, embarrassed, the lady was frantically picking up the shattered pieces, while her husband peeled off each barcode saying, "We have to pay for all this." What a sad scene. Someone has a mishap, and all eyes were on her. When I knelt beside her to help, a man also knelt beside us and said, "Leave it. We will pick this up. Let us get your information so you can go to the hospital and have that wound in your hand looked at." The lady looked at him and said, "But I have to pay for this." Man said, "No, ma'am, I am the manager and we have insurance for this. You don't have to pay anything. Let us get you taken care of." For you who have read this far, I would like you to close your eyes and imagine God doing the same for you, collecting the pieces of your broken heart from all the missteps and blows that life has thrown at you. God will heal your wounds and your sins and mistakes will be forgiven. This is a warranty called grace. And when you accept God as this is the warranty called grace, that when you accept God as your only Savior, the manager of the existence of the universe will tell you everything is already paid for. Go on your way. Something to reassure us, On one part, he made us to become conscious of the impurities, cleansing of the impurities. At the same time, in order to see that we don't get demotivated, we don't get frustrated, he also brought out an incident by which we are reminded that God is the indwelling reality within us, who is the cause for everything that is happening, who gave us a sense of individuality and assume an independent role. And in that independent role, when we commit blunders, there is every likelihood that we get frustrated. How do I move on? So here he gives. The only thing is, you should know that he is there. Then through his grace, all these things are washed off, paid for. Something that gives us joy, First one, when we read, it was disturbing us.
Great hope also it gives, Swami. Great hope it gives.
Hope. Now, before we enter, we will read the forward article of one Lance C. Nelson, University of San Diego, who wrote this forward to the foreign edition of In the Vision of God. In the first volume, there is a different message. In the second volume, there is an altogether different message. We will try to go through that. This, the final volume in Swami Ramdas's autobiographical trilogy, continues the story of his divinely guided wanderings. Ramdas is led from his home state of Kerala to Rishikesh, a pilgrim center in the foothills of the Himalayas and beyond. He journeys to the beautiful Vale of Kashmir, then back via Bombay to North Kerala, where his devotees start an ashram for him, and he meets Mother Krishna Bai, his most eminent disciple. As they journey with Ramdas, I would ask readers to keep in mind his title for this volume, noting well that the word vision has been substituted for the quest of Ramdas's first book, In Quest of God. This may seem too obvious, but it is worthwhile mentioning because the deceptive simplicity of Ramdas's style may allow us to forget the significance of what he describes. Here we have an account of a human being who was directly and vividly aware of the absolute non-duality of God and the world. As he traveled, he experienced everything as identical with and transparent to the blissful infinite. This vision, Ramdas said, dated from the time of the great mystical awakening he had in the cave at Mangalore, described in the early pages of volume number 1. Having attained constant awareness of self as the divine, capital S, a state called Sahaja Samadhi, Swami Ramdas could no longer say I. He began referring to himself as Ramdas in the third person. Later during the day, Ramdas lived a more settled life in Anandashram. He was asked why he no longer repeated Ramnam, the holy name of God. After all, this was the spiritual practice that had lifted him to the heights of God realization. He responded, who is there to repeat it? He who used to repeat it has ceased to exist, having become one with Ram. Reflecting on the Himalayan journey described in the present volume, Ramdas described his experience. He felt the oneness of the Spirit everywhere, and there was nothing besides himself. Everything was a manifestation of his own self. While he was seeing the divine self as pervading every particle of the universe, he experienced simultaneously that same infinite as a personal God, his beloved Ram, speaking to him, guiding him in an utterly personal way. Thus we have in this book, as was mentioned in the foreword to volume number 1, a most extraordinary play of non-dualism and devotion, Advaita and Bhakti, documented in a most intimate and authentic manner. Readers will be transfixed, for example, by a remarkable episode in Ramdas's Himalayan pilgrimage. Descending a mountain slope, in serious and imminent danger of losing his footing and plunging to his death below, Ramdas carries on a conversation with Ram, who advises him at every step which way to go, which way not to go, so as to avoid a disaster. Episodes like this, in which Ramdas reveals more directly the nature of his experience, are important. True, he describes this experience, as he does many others, with an innocence and understatement that may cause us to miss the significance. All the more reason, then, for us to note carefully the astounding familiarity of his relationship with God. We should remind ourselves to keep it in mind as we read other episodes where he does not let it be so apparent. Evidently, this relationship with God changed and deepened even beyond the level of intimacy described in this book. During the ashram years, Papa referred to this period, quote, when Ramdas was wandering in the Himalayas several years ago, he used to converse with him. Him means Ram. There was with him the impersonal person. We will say, from after going through Papa's teachings, that Ramnam is a powerful method by which we connect ourselves with him, number one. But another important thing is that we should have this regular dialogue with him. Right from first chapter we find in Quest of God, this dialogue is there. Dialogue indirectly makes us aware of his presence within us. The moment we start the dialogue, there is a tacit acceptance, implied acceptance, that he is there. Otherwise, how will we talk to him? So the most struggling point in all of us, we are filled with all details, but we still are yet to feel his presence within. So Papa is now giving us a clue through this article. When Ramdas was wandering in the Himalayas several years ago, he used to converse with Ram. There was with him the impersonal person. He could commune with him. He could talk to him. Even now he does it, but very rarely. Because he is from within, inspiring and guiding Ramdas every moment. As such, he is living and moving in a state of ecstasy and freedom. The ecstasy abides with him 24 hours without effort. Reading such words, we might ask, what can all this mean to us who are far, far from living on this level of constant liberated joy? For me at least, this book provides a compelling and inspiring example of what human beings can become. Perhaps not today or tomorrow, but Ramdas's vivid awareness of God points to more than his freedom. It tells us of our destiny. Equally important, it tells us of life and living, and more specifically an enlightened attitude thereto. Sensitive readers of Ramdas's life will gain, much more than awesome reports of mystical visions or miracles, a lengthy immersion in the everyday life attitude of a God-realized saint as he travels amongst his fellow human beings. This is the uniqueness. Under the banner of spiritual discipline, Papa did not confine himself to a particular place. Avoiding all the busy life outside. He was very much with the life. Just like Mahatma Ji, Gandhiji was also a realized saint, but at the same time he was very much with the world. It gives us some assurance to all of us. Because none of us are full-timers in the sense living exclusively for chanting, living exclusively for God remembrance, living exclusively in our vows, resolves. We have all those things little, but at the same time, we are one with the common run of life. So is there any hope for us? This is how he addresses. He allows their hostility to wash. He notices their exasperating foibles. That means he travels amongst his fellow human beings. He allows their hostility to wash over him. He laughs with them and shares their joys, feels their sorrows. He meets to the extent he can their endless need. All of this with a particular attitude. It is not exactly humility because there is no ego to be humbled. It is detached, but in a way that includes the all-encompassing empathy of universal love. It is fearless with a faith that bears the certain confidence that God's will is being done in all circumstances. When we read of the compassionate enlightenment of, say, the master of yogis of the Himalayas or the Buddhas inhabiting transcendental realms, it is one thing. But when we have the opportunity to imbibe Ramdas's day-to-day perspective on life at length as he journeys on the dusty roads of India, it is another. I find a remarkable quality of these stories is that I read them, then somehow carry something of Ramdas's attitude towards people and events into my own life. This indeed is a special grace. Its effect is particularly noticeable when I return to these pages after having neglected them for some time. The spiritual tone of my life takes a remarkable turn for the better, and I don't refer here to the specifically spiritual aspects of my life, meditation, worship, and so on. Rather, it is the everyday interaction with persons and circumstances that is marvelously influenced. Consider one of the stories in the pages that follow. On the road to Kashmir, Ramdas had sought solitude for the night in a small stone-walled basement room of a temple in Pathankot. Late in the evening, he was brought out of meditation by the temple priest, who had come with a few friends from the town. They brought a light and musical instruments, eagerly desiring to spend some happy hours in devotional singing in the blessed company of a visiting saint. Rams will be done. Ramdas welcomed them, seeing them as embodiments of his own beloved Ram. The music got underway, but suddenly stopped. A virulently poisonous snake had entered the room. The visitors were horrified, fearing for their lives, seeing death itself approaching across the floor. Ramdas was unperturbed. In fact, he remained in semi-ecstasy. It was Ram's will that the snake had come. Indeed, the venomous visitor was none other than Ram himself, to be welcomed royally with offerings of sugar candy. When our solitude is impinged upon, are we able to see the divine hand at work? When confronted with threatening obstacles in our path, do we send the visitation of God? Mostly I forget. But I know of a few more helpful antidotes to my forgetfulness than the words and examples of Papa Ramdas. As a child of God, Ramdas said of himself, he is freely moving about under his guidance and protection. He meets his beloved everywhere. You are all forms of his beloved. Why should he then feel himself a stranger anywhere? He is one with you. He is your eternal companion in the spirit. Papa Ramdas is also, I would add, a most precious friend. Because of his abundant love and concern for us, he made us to, the book In Quest of God was instrumental in taking up the thread from him. He wanted all of us to have an in-depth study, arrive at our own conclusions based upon our own experiences. That is what we have been watching ourselves for the past 5-6 months. Whenever we go back to the same chapter or the Papa's narrations, we find a different meaning, a different approach, a different perspective, a different attitude. And as Lance C. Nelson of University of Santiago mentions, it has its own impact. Probably not in the way in which we all expect, but it has its own impact. So when we start hearing that you start a dialogue, you start a dialogue, you start a dialogue, or when he says, he doesn't say you start a dialogue, he starts the dialogue. A tendency slowly wells up in our mind, I should also develop, While narrating the qualification of a dearest devotee in chapter number 12, Swami Ranganathanji Maharaj said, when we read this, I also want to become a devotee, I also want to become the dearest devotee of God. What should I do now? When we read once, twice, thrice, 4 times, when we hear the same thing, slowly, I also want to become the dearest devotee of God. That means he is causing the awakening in us. In order to keep up the tempo, keep it alive, what has been touched and kindled, we have to do something. So when he keeps on hammering from chapter number 1 to chapter number 37 in Quest of God, that a regular dialogue with him is the one assuring point, assuring factor of slowly accepting his presence. So when we keep on reading it, don't you think we also get this, I must have a dialogue with him. So far the problem was to have a dialogue, I should have another person. Whether he is in front of me or probably through a phone. Somewhere, or at a distance, somebody is calling me and I reply him back. So we have been thinking that to have a dialogue, I must have another person. Papa answers here, there is an impersonal person who has been with you, who is with you. So today he is drawing our attention to this salient aspect. We may do so many spiritual disciplines, but ultimately it should zero to feeling his presence, a glimpse of his presence first. And then later slowly, moving nearer to it. So Ramnam, while introducing Ramnam, he used to say that name is the link between us and God. So along with chanting Ramnam, we also try to develop this dialogue. So that slowly the chanting will become more and more effective, more and more attentive, more and more focused, more and more concentrated. Previously, when the mind chants, there was a tendency for the mind to go out after some time of chanting. So we get punctured. With all this again I chant, the mind still goes out. So here is another one, dialogue. So Nama chanting with dialogue, See, because we are not in a position to chant like him for 22 hours. We are not like him to free ourselves from the comfort zones. Everything starts only after ensuring our comfort zones. So in his case, he was able to deny or get himself freed from all comfort zones. So that is why he was able to chant 22 hours out of 24 hours with the right attitude. So in our case, these are all the hurdles. We are unable to free ourselves from the comfort zones.
Swamiji, one doubt, Swamiji. Papa having realized that talking to Ram is okay, but without knowing who Ram is, can we talk to him directly like that? Will we hear it? Will we hear it? Simply knowing who he is, just we can have a dialogue. Will it be fitting? I don't know, something. We are doing it, but no result so far. Every morning when Papa, you pray that, but so far he is not getting. If you are simply praying, it will be all right.
Only when we try and then when we fail, we try to improve, Throughout our life, we have not mastered straight away. We have failed many a times. We did not lose heart. When we first tried to learn the alphabets, did it come to us straight away? So here we have to believe the words of the Master. And you are right, we don't know with whom we have to. Achha. But we will assume, just like we assume so many things and do that. We try to meet a person thinking that we will be able to meet him, but he may not be there. He may be there. So many things. Let us try to look at our own life. Only in this matter we find, some we cannot do it. In rest of the things we have got persevering effort. When we have taken upon something, we don't lose heart. We learnt everything only by patience, perseverance. We all know that Papa had intensely done for 2 years. Then only he was able to get a grip. Just now we read that, Dada Vasvani Ji's. So unless and until we make a move, we think we are making a move. No, we are not really making a move. That is why today he brought the word impersonal person. He is not palpable, he is not tangible. At the same time, we know that there is a mysterious power that is enabling me to exist. So I name him as a impersonal person. Or if my mind refuses, I can bring any Ishtadevata or Mahatma in its place and have a dialogue. Whatever way. We read the stories of many Bhaktotamas where they easily converse with the Ishtadevata. 2 days back we read a great devotee of, we don't know whether we read it out here. The boy, you remember? One lady devotee was intensely praying that I must have the vision of Bhagavan, Lord Krishna. After some time, a boy came and was closely moving with. And she was quite happy about it. So one day, for some reason, when he was tied down, and in another place, Naividyam was offered. There the Bhakta also gets an experience that the Naividyam is accepted by the Lord. But on this particular day, he did not feel that the Naividyam has been accepted. So he started wondering why. When the moment the lady devotee released him from the bondage, suddenly, the other devotee felt that the Naividyam has been accepted by the Lord. When we read all these things, it may be an assumption in the early stage. Initially, it may be an assumption. But that assumption slowly results in realizing the reality, It is not a cock and bull story. So every now and then, because we are not full-timers, all these inputs are to be gone through again and again and again and again. So impersonal person, if we are unable to concentrate on that impersonal person, a nameless, formless, birthless, deathless power, a subtle and mysterious power, we have been given the freedom to bring him through any form and converse with him. Actually, don't you think that when you do puja, is it not a conversation? In your photo, you are superimposing the deity and you do puja, telling that you are this, you are that, you are this, you are that. We are all happy, after doing that puja.
Yes.
Is it not a dialogue? When we say dialogue, Have we separated it from our use? We have done it, we are enjoying it. The only thing is not sustaining, that's all. So here, we are not daydreaming. We are trying to, we know that he is there, but for some reasons, I am unable to concentrate on his nameless, formless aspect. So I am giving a name and form to him, and then I am conversing with him, and later on a stage comes when I pray to him to make me to transcend. While retaining my reverence to that form, I should also be able to transcend that plane. These are all some of the ways Papa has given to us.
Swamiji, there is no doubt, Swamiji, that when dialogue is being prescribed for our spiritual journey, natural dialogue, it gives very good encouragement for our spiritual journey. There is no doubt. There is no doubt at all. It gives us lift only. Our mind is actually lifted. Because we hope, we are getting hope that we can have a communion with our dialogue. There is no doubt at all. It's a very good thing, Swamiji, in my opinion.
We must, correct. We must try. Never we get demotivated, no? Though the sense of incompleteness is the fuel for us, incentive for us, but we should not get, it should not puncture our efficiency or enthusiasm. You remember, Papa's that 3 words: fixed resolve, optimistic outlook, sustaining faith. Because we are his children, he will never leave us. We have to keep on bringing this in our sattvic moments, you know. There the receptivity will be there. Ordinary moments, probably we may not be able to retain that. In our sattvic moments, when God blesses with the sattvic moments, he does give us every day, probably for a short time. We become aware of the sattvic moments he gifts us every day. Probably 99% may be sattvic and rajasic and tamasic, but still 1% he gives to us. There will be some moments in a day when we feel an inexplicable, pleasant feeling in our heart.
That is when we attend Satsang, Swami.
That is when we attend Satsang. When we attend Satsang.
Anything, you know, whether you remember about the Satsang then? When we remember about Lord's advice to Uddhava, we are not reading now. But finally, when the tears came from Lord's eyes, it touched our heart, didn't it?
Yes.
It keeps touching. So the other day we were reading Sudhama Charitra, no? So not necessarily at that time. The impact will be there when we attentively hear, do some manana. As somebody said in some article, we don't remember exactly the evolved soul who wrote this. Only 25% benefit comes from hearing. 70% comes from manana. 5% comes from nididhyasana. So if we are just satisfied with the 25% of our hearing, naturally we will 75% is very 75%, very 25%. So this manana is definitely needed. That is why he said meditative chanting, you know. And whenever there is a pause moment in our daily life, be the period ever so small, borrowing Papa's own words, you know. Be the period ever so small, we will try to encash this rarest opportunity of having a dialogue with him, a prayer. and pray to him, and enable me to keep up this by chanting your name. Now what happens is, you have also given so many individual problems to me. That individual problems overweigh when I do the chanting. I find it difficult to chant in the way in which it is to be chanted. Not that I don't want. I want that to be chanted. Like that, we place ourselves completely before him, frankly. And Papa teaches from his own experience that such things do pay rich dividends. Because we should know Papa's approach is Jnanottara Bhakti. Jnana is there, path of knowledge is there, and path of devotion is also there. There is a harmonious blend of both Jnana and Bhakti. First he takes us through Jnana. Puja Mataji the other day gave us the clarity. Why am I asking you to read 11 times? Then only you will have the Nirguna Brahman. Some idea about Nirguna Brahman. Because throughout he converts with that impersonal person. But at the same time, it is not a dry philosophy which doesn't stay with us, because he has given this paste of bhakti. So the dialogue is the one which gives us the feeling of that impersonal person. Otherwise it will become dry. We will not reach anywhere. We may intellectually understand, but later on when we are one with our common run of life, when we have to face challenges, we find, there is a lot of gap between what we have read and what we see outside. But when we have this relationship with the impersonal person, then and there we can place the matter before him, So today probably Papa wants all of us to concentrate upon this salient aspect of intensifying our contact with him through chanting by having regular dialogues throughout the day. Actually in ashram, Mataji must have planned, though she would not have said in so many words, or we don't know whether she has also said like that. When we attend the Ramnam program, followed by what? You just imagine chronologically. 11:30 to 12:15 we have Ramnam. Trying to control the mind and getting fixed on Ramnam. Then comes Prabhu Vishwanatha, the universal prayer, where though we have not attained, we still keep on asserting that make me thine and thine only forever and ever. And with that we light the arati. The light, symbolically the light that illumines, And then afterwards the pradakshina. And in the pradakshina also we try to bring everything. Finally the surrender is also there, kayena vaja. And finally we say, we are telling, though we have not gone anywhere near to it, that wherever I look, I see. Wherever the mind goes, wherever the mind goes, I see you only. Wherever my head touches, it is only feet, your holy feet. That is how we say Asatoma, then we say Anandaganda, Sachidananda, Purna Brahma, Purushottama, Sat. So all saints are also brought there and we say Namaskar, and then we go and for all we offer our we offer our gratitude in the way of bowing down at the holy feet of our masters for having facilitated all these every day. So when we go to the shrine inside, with all this background, initially we may not know. It was in Marathi, a little bit of, curiosity will make us to know all these things. And luckily, Papa has made it easy for us to have this Arati translated in different languages. In English, it is definitely there. And so when we try to go along with it, the whole session, just imagine now, bhajan followed by Ramnam, then universal prayer, then Arati, then assertion of his supremacy, and then surrender aspect. And then finally we say, what will be the result when I surrender? Seeing him everywhere. This is how she has set everything day. So is this not a dialogue? We are very much with him. Please think over it. Whether we physically attend the session or not, when we are telling now, the whole thing goes before our eye, mental vision. There is a beautiful chronological order. Right from 10:30 to 11:30, bhajan. We forgot to make a mention about bhajan. Bhajan makes a proper ambience, mental ambience, to get a glimpse of the sattvic moments in us, to touch and kindle the sattvic tendency in us, and then to sustain it Ramnam in a melodious voice with no disturbance, sitting before the image of our Guru, and then one by one, the universal prayer, which is a class by itself. So all these things, when viewed from this, when we talk about the impersonal person, all these things will give us more and more clarity. So let us all pray to him. You have given us so many clues. Enable us to take the best advantage of all these things. Whether we are in the ashram or elsewhere, we will try to go through it. Somebody used to tell us every day on important days, from Madras, she used to tell, I am every day coming to you to take flowers from you. I am every day going inside to place it at the holy feet of our master. And I take every day his Pada Tirtha. She is sitting, in Madras. But every time religiously she mentions this. I attend the program there. I attend the Arati there. That's a great thing. So the impact will be there. And you see, all these things are inputs for raising up our sattvic level. Let us try. There are so many ways. If one way is not suitable for us, another way will be open for us. So let us concentrate and at the same time pray to him for facilitating all these things to us. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om